Hello, this is Sana, and let's make a beautiful flower display to plant under a tree. There's a three-part plan. The first is let's determine the right plants to use and get the right flowers for the conditions. Second, let's design a plan to really make the most impact. And number three, let's actually implement it so that it will be healthy and recurring year after year. Part one is to look at which plants to actually plant under a tree. So there's two ways to think about it. The first is when you first think of a tree, of course, you think shade. So you would want to select plants that love shade. Now those are very limited, and particularly if you live in an area that also has deer or other types of animals that may want to make that their salad bar, then you have even fewer options. So there's another option, which is also under a deciduous tree, so a tree that loses its leaves in the winter. You can plant early blooming flowers and have a wonderful flash of beautiful color to start the spring before the tree actually fills out. And that's what I'm going to do here. But really the same principles apply about thinking about your display and then also implementing. I'm selecting flowers that bloom really early in the season. So thinking about daffodils, thinking about a lot of bulbs that will come up while the soil is still cold and the sun is actually reaching through the canopy at that time. So now design principle number two is make a great impact with your flower design. I like to actually write mine out. Here is one that came from Holland Bulbs, which I think is a great example that we can see. Here's a tree, and then actually drawing out what are some of the flowers that you want to have around the tree. Remember, there are a couple of key principles to think about when designing that. The first being making sure to cascade the flowers so you can see all of them. So the tallest ones go right in against the trunk, then the medium height, and then the shorter ones, and then maybe even ground cover around that. The next principle is to make that impact. You don't want to have just a thin circle of a flower and then another thin circle of a different one. It doesn't really make that big impact. What you want to have is a very large section that really stands out and shows that color, and then put a contrasting color next to it so that it really brings out the strength of each one. So I prefer to have like a group of at least 5 plants in one spot, and then contrasting color 5 plants, and go around that way. Usually 3 groupings, so 3 of one plant, 3 groups of another plant, so that lends itself to about 15 plants in total of each of the different kinds. Now, of course, they'll be a little bit different if you have ones that are thinner versus some of the more bulky plants, but the principle is the same, is making kind of 3 different sections that have one color contrasted with 3 that have another. Then go ahead and put some sort of like kind of thick ring around it that kind of holds it all together. That gives it a nice kind of flow around the entire tree, and that can be for the middle size, a really good place to use that. And of course the ground cover, because then you start to go into your overall lawn or ground around it. So what I've done here, and what Holland Bulbs has here, is you can see they've actually written out what I will put. And they have also, they've put their really tallest daffodils in the center, then a mid-sized daffodil, something for a great contrast of color. So we see a lot of yellows, salmons, and kind of more of a rose color. Well, let's contrast that with a nice, bold purple. And then some little patches that become ground cover of crocuses and things. Now, all of those flowers bloom at about the same time, so you get this massive impact. It's there for about a month right at the beginning of the season, and then it starts to fall back. So then you want to think about the rest of your yard. Does it have other areas of interest? So in my case, the tree will be the first big call of spring. It will have a great flower display and then start to fall back. Then I'll have the Spanish bluebells come up, followed by the azaleas and the rhododendrons, and then throughout the summer, the cycle of different lilies and things like this. So it actually moves around the yard, and that's a good way if you want to use that pop of color under a deciduous tree to be able to have more variety of, sun-loving plants even under a tree. Let's get ready to implement. We want to prepare well to live well, and that's the same for your plants. So we want to do it really properly one time so that they can really bed in, give you great flowers, and then also be sustainable, come back year after year, and even grow and expand so that they can really achieve their full glory. So to do that, I like to use the kitchen principle of mise en place, which is just everything in its place. So the first thing is I've got all the bulbs that I'll need for the entire design. I've also got some fertilizer for the plants. I also have the plan, very important. And then I have my trusty shovel here. And because we will be digging deeply, I have one that has a pointed tip rather than one with a square tip. And this one even has a cut-in, which just makes things easier. It's less taxing to dig a deeper hole. And we will want to dig deeply for this initial piece. So for the bulbs that I'm planting, the directions are that they should be about 6 to 8 inches underground. So we'll go down that deeply. And then for any type of perennial plants that you might have, you're still going to want to dig a little bit deeper than what the pot suggests. And that way you can have a good transition in the soil from the soil they grew up in into your soil, and to be able to loosen those roots to really help them to bed in. Putting a little bit of fertilizer just under the bulbs or the plants, perfect to help to encourage those roots to come out. Even in this case, I'm planting these before the frosts, and so they will be in the ground during the coldest part of the year, but they'll still actually put some roots into the ground, get nice and healthy and bedded in during this period, so that in spring they can just take their energy and pump those beautiful flowers up nice and early in the year. So now's a good time to mention when we're cutting into the ground, we really want to be careful about those tree roots. What we want to do is not injure the tree at all, and we want to make a really nice home for our plants. So do be careful not to hit those big roots. Maybe some small ones could be taken out, but beware. You'll feel them as you go in, so just be careful to stay away from the larger ones, but still get that depth around the tree so that you can get those plants nice and deep into the soil. As you're digging into the soil now, you'll also be able to see the quality of the soil. Now, under a tree tends to be pretty good because you'll have the falling leaves. I can also see that I've got a good amount of earthworms and other types of insects in there. That's great. We really want to have that for good, healthy soil. If you don't, think about getting your soil tested, getting it enriched if you want to do that. Otherwise, buy some garden soil or some flower planting soil to be able to enrich it. So I've just finished shoveling all around that tree, and boy, that's hard work. Working around those roots, not easy job, but it's worth taking the time, getting it right, doing at least the best that you can. I've also now just sprinkled in the bulb food. You can use whatever fertilizer that makes sense for the plants that you are putting in place. So now we've got the soil prepared and ready to be planted. So now I just want to make sure that I've got it well lined up. So I'm facing the street, and kind of the biggest aspect of where people will be looking at the display from. So I'm just going to kind of line that up and then put that so that I've got the natural break of, you know, one pack of flowers on one side and one pack on the other, and then you can start to see already a little bit of the other color on either side of that as well. So that way we'll really kind of maximize that and it'll have some kind of nice symmetry. I've got all the bulbs ready to go, and just to make it easy, I've laid the plan in the middle and put the bulbs exactly around where that plan says they should be. So here we have the fortune daffodils, and there's the fortune daffodils. Here we have the fondant hyacinth, and there's the fondant hyacinth. Just make life a lot easier. And I've got my plan right there so that we can start to go. So for planting bulbs, we want to make sure to have the pointy end up and any kind of root ball down. Main thing, pointy end up. And then you push that directly into the ground, and then we'll cover that up. And you'll see I have the spacing 4 inches to 6 inches apart. Because these are perennializing and naturalizing. Perennializing means they'll come back year after year, and naturalizing means they will grow and they will expand. So you see these here that I've already they've already come with another one growing next to it. That just shows what will happen when we have healthy bulbs growing, become more and more dense each year. So really lovely to get naturalizing bulbs to be able to replenish themselves and come back even healthier every year. If you did watch my video about a spring bouquet in a pot, you'll see that I really pack those in much more densely, only a couple inches apart, and am able to open up that pot later on and pull apart some of those bulbs later to be able to plant elsewhere. Here, I'll just want to leave them and let them go and grow and be very happy, and I probably don't have to do anything at all to these for the next 5 years. So now I am covering up the bulbs, have most of those covered, and am just using my trusty shovel to pull that dirt that was pushed along the side there over the bulbs and get that as smooth as possible. Fill in any gaps where they might have shown up. Next thing to do is to just stomp that down, and just lightly. So you see I'm not putting my full weight on there, but I am going ahead and stomping down on that soil just to pack it back in. We want to get out most of the air pockets. This is the next step. I'll just sprinkle a little water on here, and that's less to hydrate it than really to, again, help to distribute that soil nice and evenly. I'll also, for good measure, go ahead and put some mulch over it, or actually in this case, I have plenty of leaves that came off the tree, and I'll just actually put those leaves back over top just to help them get kind of cozy for the winter. So I've just finished planting all the bulbs that are really right around the tree, and I'd like to add a little bit into the ground cover area. So I'm just going to put a little bit further out 5 different sections. For the ground cover planting, I'm using crocuses, and you can see these are small bulbs. They're also very small plants, so they only grow up to be about 4 to 6 inches. So they also look great in lawns. They also only need to be put in 2 or 3 inches under the ground. So I just have a very shallow little hole here, and am planting 5 in each of 5 different holes around here, and that will just help to draw that eye in. I hope you enjoyed planting your flowers under the tree, and also enjoyed looking at them this year and for many years to come. If you enjoyed this, please like this video and also subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it and hope to see you again soon.